Up next, B2EMO from Andor. Well, hey everyone, and welcome back to another Interstellar Modeler. What I'm going to be working on in this video is this little replica here of B2EMO. This is a 3D printed model of the droid from Andor, and I wasn't sure I actually was going to even share this project with you because there's not much to it, but I figured it'd be a good exercise with weathering. Now, I'll give you a closer look and give you more details about this model in just a second, but before I begin, I just wanted to make one request. I really enjoyed Andor. It was one of my favorite series, but I realize it wasn't everybody's favorite. Unfortunately, as with other fandoms, whether it's Star Trek, Marvel, or Star Wars, a lot of the content that's been released as of late tends to generate not only positive, but certainly a lot of negativity as well. And when those two things meet on any forum, it just turns pretty ugly and very disappointing, if you ask me. A lot of comments can be pretty ugly and even hurtful. So I've always tried to keep the channel very positive here, and I want to continue to do that. So I just ask that you direct any comments that you have or relate any comments that you have to the project that we'll be working on here. Always happy to answer any questions you might have. All right, let's go ahead and get started. So the STL files for this model can be found on CGTrader.com. It was designed by Emporium 3D. He's got about 16 other Star Wars related models there for sale, at least the STL files that you can purchase for download. And what I loved about this particular model here is that he's included all the little surface imperfections that you see there on the droid. Because as you know, if you're familiar with B2EMO, he's not a mint condition droid by any means. The first thing you notice as you see him on screen, he's pretty well worn and beat up and pretty rough looking. And the other ones that you can find online look like they would print as if he was in mint condition. And I just wasn't confident that I could, even though I could paint the weathering, I wasn't confident that I could place in the little divots and dents that you see on the surface here. So that's one thing that really looked great with this particular model. Now, the model can be printed much larger than this. I am, as I've mentioned many times, running out of space, so I didn't want a particularly large model of B2EMO, but this can be printed at various sizes. He also has two versions of the body. The one that you see here is with these sections extended. He does have one where it's contracted. And what I love about this too is he's designed it so that the head, which prints separately, rests in this bowl, so you can position the head at various angles if you like, or you can certainly glue them into place. I'm not decided yet on what I'm going to do with that. The one thing about resin is that it is brittle, and that's the other reason why I wasn't sure I could chip away at any of those other models to make it look right. But if this were to drop, there's no doubt it would damage pretty easily. So I think what I may end up doing is just choosing a position to glue them into, but I'll wait to decide that towards the end. Now, the model was also printed solid. Of course, you can hollow out 3D printed models, and I often do so, but because of the size here, I was particularly concerned about the side modules here, that when I hollowed them out, there are a lot of little nooks and crannies on the inside, and what I used to cure the interior of a hollowed out model is a 3mm LED. And although I could have made, and I did experiment with this, 3mm holes here to allow the insertion of the light, again, I just wasn't sure it was going to cure properly, and I didn't want to take the chance that it would crack later down the line, because that's what happens when it's not properly cured. Alright, well, let's go ahead and begin. As I said, this would be a good exercise here with weathering, and after I complete the droid, I'm going to create a little base for him as well. Let's get started. So as I said, and as many of you know, the droid is heavily weathered, and so to accomplish this look, I'm going to be using some chipping fluid. And so the first step is to apply the color that will be exposed, and I wanted to use a black-brown color for this. So I mixed together just some craft paint. You can see I'm applying it here with my airbrush. And after this was dried, I applied a gloss coating in preparation of the next step now, which is to brush on some chipping fluid. Well, actually, I think I'm going to end up using the hairspray and salt technique versus the chipping fluid. And prior to applying that, I decided to mask off these larger sections in order to apply the gunmetal, because I think it would be easier to mask those smaller sections off when applying the red colors. So the next step was to apply the hairspray and salt technique, and I chose this versus chipping fluid because of the scale I'm working with here. I wanted a finer, more stippled appearance when done. Now, I've demonstrated this technique before, but in summary, I begin with spraying some hairspray into a cup, and remember now a gloss coat has been applied to the surface prior to all of this. I then brushed the hairspray onto areas I wanted exposed and weathered. This is followed by sprinkling the salt and allowing it to dry. Now you can use a brush dipped in water to dissolve the salt. Later on, I moved on to a wet cloth instead because the brush ended up removing too much paint in some cases. And around these corners, I felt a toothpick worked best. And here I'm using that moist cloth to rub off the salt, as I just wanted dot-like defects. And here is how it looked completed. Next was a brown-black wash that I generously applied. And this worked great to dirty up B2 even further and to also enhance the panel lines. The eyes were then painted with a gloss black. After applying the gloss coat, I masked off the areas for the gray stripe that surrounds the body. And there's also gray marking on his head next to the eye. And to give the stripe the weathered, worn appearance, I chose to apply it with a sponge, and I used Vallejo's light gray for the color. Well, I'm going to go ahead and finish this up and wait to show you B2 at the final reveal. Okay, well, moving on to the stand, one of the things I did purchase was a foam cutter. It made it so much easier to trim down the insulation foam. So we've got two pieces. This is going to act as the base, and we've got this piece that's going to act as the wall. And what I'd like to do is to duplicate the look of those broken down brick walls that you see on ferrets. So what I also 3D printed were a few other parts here. Let me go ahead and show them to you. We have a container, just some odds and ends. And the idea is to place the container right here, and this other piece about right here. And then these would be just kind of scattered, you know, around, and then B2EMO is going to be right here. Now, to create the brick texture on the wall, I went ahead and printed this out. This is a texture roller. These are available for free on Thingiverse. I can place the link below. I've used this one in the past to create larger bricks, and so when using this, it comes out like this. But on ferrets, they don't have the thick bricks like that. They are these thin type bricks, and you can see that by pressing the roller onto this, you can see in the video here, it comes out with this brick texture like that. So again, what I'm looking for is a wall that's going to look worn, where you'll have some of the wall kind of eroded away and worn, while you'll still have some areas where you see the brick. And so I was practicing on this here, and the idea is to use this chisel to create this worn look. Whatever's left behind is going to be textured with our roller. Now, unfortunately, the lines created by the texture roller weren't deep enough for this project, so after the Mod Podge dried and I applied some brick red color, I ended up using my X-Acto knife to scribe in deeper lines for the bricks. And I proceeded with dry brushing and applying just different colors to the brick to try to make it look realistic. And this is how it turned out. I also applied a brown wash to the ground and added in some rocks and glued into place all the extra pieces I had printed. Coming up next, the completed project. Okay, so here is the completed B2EMO, and not sure what scale this turned out to be, but the robot measures about 3 inches from top to bottom. This was printed from files found on CGTrader, and the link is below. Now, as mentioned at the beginning of the video, what drew me to this particular file are the surface defects that the designer included, and as anticipated, they worked out great. I think he did a wonderful job placing the divots and imperfections throughout the entire piece, and when painted and weathered, you can see it makes a very nice replica of the little ground mech salvage droid. Now, what's interesting is that he has one wheel module that is different than the rest, and this is the rear right module. It's different in design from the rest and is yellow in color, and I suppose at one point this means that the module broke down and had to be replaced with something similar, although this implies they had to make do with what could be found. For the colors, pretty simple. I used craft paints here. The model was first painted with a black-brown mix for weathering purposes, and the base color was primary red from Americana. The yellow was Vallejo's flat yellow mixed with a little yellow ochre, and I used Vallejo's gunmetal for the silver parts. The gray stripe around him was sponged on, and I used Vallejo's light gray for that. Now, if you recall, the model prints in 2 parts, the body and the head resting inside a bowl at the top of the body. And of course, you have the option to glue it into place, and if you remember, I was debating at the beginning of the video what to do. I decided rather than gluing it permanently into place, I used this adhesive poster putty. Just a small bit of it keeps the head movable, yet secure to where it easily wouldn't fall off the model. And as for the display, it turned out well, although I think the brick turned out just okay. I watched several videos on how to make a simulated brick wall, and the challenge I found here was the scale and the type of brick I was trying to simulate. It made it difficult to paint in bricks of different color, which I think is critical to making it look realistic, and adding in any mortar was also a challenge. But overall, I think it's not too bad. And I think the added extra 3D printed pieces worked out perfectly to complete the project. Those pieces were weathered with washes and a Tamiya weathering kit. Okay guys, well that is going to be a wrap for this project, and if you have any questions, feel free to leave a comment or a question below or email me at interstellarmodeler@gmail.com. One other quick notation here, as I mentioned at the beginning of the video, there are other files available for a B2EMO replica that you can 3D print. In particular, there's one by JawaJunk on CGTrader. That one actually comes in more parts that you print and put together. As you saw, this one just comes into 2 parts, the body and the head. But I still think the main difference, at least that I see there, are the surface imperfections that he's included in the design here. As I looked closely at that one, I don't think it includes any of that. It looks like it would come out, like I said, in mint condition, but you might want to check it out. Again, it's JawaJunk on CGTrader. I'll put the link below. But I'm very happy with this one, and certainly think it can be printed larger. I might do that at some point. Somebody had mentioned that about lighting this kit. You certainly could print the head in clear resin and put an LED in there. I just thought with the size of this one, I didn't think it was worth doing that here. So, wrap for this project as well as a wrap for 2022. I was hoping to get to one more model this year. I had purchased this one. This is a 1/48 scale TIE Fighter, which apparently is a re-release. I wasn't aware they made a model of the TIE Fighter, but I was told this was originally released a number of years ago with a kit that came with 2 TIE Fighters. But I saw it on Cult TV Man's website thinking it was the newer one that's going to be coming out. It's a 1/32 scale model of the TIE Fighter. I just didn't pay close attention. I'm still glad I got this one though. I opened up the box and it looks like a cool little kit to work with, so I'll definitely get to it in the coming year. And speaking of models that I'll be working on, I'm going to actually kick off the year with this one. This is the Interior to the Shuttlecraft model now. As many of you are aware, the original shuttle that was released did not include an interior, which most people were disappointed about. But kudos to Round 2 for getting things together and releasing not only the interior kit, but kit with figures too, which is what caught my eye. I had already purchased the Randy Cooper kit and was planning on using that. But yeah, after seeing that it came with figures, I figured, I'll just go ahead and order it and save the Randy Cooper kit for another build down the line. So this is what I'll be using for that particular build. And that's going to be in February of 2023. As I usually do, I'm going to take off the rest of December and January from the channel just to recharge my batteries and get to a few other things. But definitely we'll be back in February of 2023. So, in the meantime, have yourself a very Merry Christmas. I wish you all the best to you and your family this holiday season. And I certainly wish for a happy, prosperous 2023 for you. Thanks again, guys. I do appreciate all the viewership and all the kind words that you leave on the channel. Also, wanted just to extend another thank you for leaving all the kind words you left on the last episode of Hot Off the Bench. I know it's a shame I had to shelve that for now, but I really do think it'll be much easier for me to proceed forward here with my builds and all the other things that I do as we come on this new year. All right, guys. Thank you very much. Take care, and I'll see you in the next one.